Welcome to another edition of the Brazilian Shirt Name podcast. The Legendino is in a somewhat cold summer in Brazil, and that fills us all with mirth. Hurrah, hurrah, hurrah. Tim, welcome, welcome, welcome. Oh, and you've got your hairy chest out on a cold day like today.
Yeah, it's a cruel summer, leaving me here on my own. But it has its compensations, and one of them is being able to team up with your good self and our great friend Pete Hooton. What a pleasure and an honour it is to
It's
welcome
great
him
to be
back.
back. It's
Well,
great to be back.
listen, since you were last here, our producer, Mark, has started describing you as a Liverpool legend. I didn't know you played for Liverpool.
No. I was going to tell him. I was going to say on the email, don't be calling me that. I still go to matches in the Cop. I'll just get slaughtered.
Well, you are a legend to us for lots of reasons, not just great football conversations that we've had with you before, but of course, musically as well. So, welcome back in all respects. Which match have you chosen for us to talk about today?
It's the FA Cup final, 1996, which was I've tried to erase from my memory banks. But
you've just given the ending away. You've just given the ending away. So it was Liverpool versus your great rivals, Manchester United, May the 11th, 1996, yeah?
Yeah. You've chosen it. I wouldn't have chosen this match.
Okay. But as you know, we always on the Brazilian Shirt Name podcast take a look back at a memorable game, memorable for whatever reason, iconic maybe even, and talk about it and just reflect on it from the benefit of hindsight. What do you remember of that day, the 11th of May, 1996? Let's start with the morning, because cup final mornings, as I remember back in the day, used to be there'd be a buzz. In the area, wouldn't they? In the atmosphere.
We came down the day before, so we were there on Friday. Went round some of the hot spots of Soho, the French House, and places like that, and Bradley's, just off Oxford. All our favourite places really. And there's an interesting story. The Saturday morning, we were staying in the Metropole Hotel on the Edgware Road, and the rumour had gone round that that's where Liverpool were going to be staying, or that's where they're going to have the party if they'd won the cup. So we all booked in, a few hundred of us or whatever. And on the Saturday morning, a lad came in with basically a plastic bag, who I recognised straight away as the brilliant promoter Simon Moran from SJM Promotions. And he came in with this plastic bag and sat down by us, and he said, "I've just sold out Nebworth 2 days, Oasis." He just said it like that. All the people were saying to me, "Who's that? Is he a Liverpool fan?" They were a bit suspicious of him, and he had a plastic bag with all his accounts and or whatever. And he was, saying, "Hey, don't tell anyone that, but I've just sold out 2 days for Nebworth for Oasis." So that's what I distinctly remember about that morning. Also remember some of the players' families were coming in, so it fitted in with the image that if we did win the cup, there could possibly be a party there, So everyone was excited. And you've got to remember that during that season, Roy Evans was on a rebuild. Collymore had come in and, he was the great hope. But you could also feel as if there was still a bit of tension on the pitch. You had the impression that, if Collymore scored a worldie, McManaman and Fowler weren't congratulating him too much. There was an element of that. I'd actually interviewed Collymore for a football magazine in 1995, and I went to Melwood to do it. And I felt a little bit sorry for him, really, because he felt like it seemed to be a person. He was isolated from the rest of the squad, And he'd only just joined, so he took that as like, this is the initial steps, But I just felt he never moved to Liverpool, I don't think. And he seemed to be an outsider. He didn't seem to be in on the jokes, and all that type of thing, even at Melwood.
One of my favourite football books is by Gareth Southgate and Andy Woodman, who came up the ranks together at Crystal Palace and went on to have very, very different careers. And they're very, very different people. Now, Gareth Southgate very much straight down the line middle class kid, and Andy Woodman, a South London ducker and diver. And he tells the story because Collymore started at Palace. I remember being at a Palace game when the fans were chanting his name. He was on the bench. And the only thing anyone knew about him was his name. But his name sounded funny. So second half, people are shouting Collymore just because it sounded like a funny name. But in this book, this Gareth Southgate book, he talks about Andy Woodman taking him to the cleaners, just conning him.
Yeah.
Because Stan, again, he's like a world apart and totally naive. Not understanding that he was being ripped off.
Yeah. I mean, he was, from memory, I think he was 8.5 million, which in those days was a lot of money. That was a big transfer fee, wasn't it?
It was the record because before that, it was Andy Cole going to Man United for 7 million from Newcastle or wherever.
Yeah.
So you signed Collymore for 8.5 million. I think that's correct.
Yeah.
And it was the record signing in the country at the time. And I wonder whether, because I think at Nottingham Forest, he did seem a cut above everybody else. He was just scoring goals for fun. I think he was the best centre forward in the country at the time, to be fair.
Yeah.
And then he goes to Liverpool. And what I remember at that time was, well, you know, you might have been a cut above the rest at Nottingham Forest, but you're not a cut above the rest at Liverpool. You need to, fight your corner, but maybe some of the baggage of being the most expensive player in the country, when you come to a place like Liverpool where there are others who could make that claim were they to be transferred, might rub a couple of people up the wrong way. Do you think that had anything to do with it?
Possibly. I think he also had, you can see on some interviews before the cup final that we're going to talk about, but you had Fowler and McManaman, homegrown talent, who thought, and probably were very funny people. They were just piss takers. That's all they were doing all the time. And obviously, I think Collymore, didn't have their personality, so he might have been the butt of some of the jokes. And also, if he scored a worldie on his debut against Sheffield Wednesday, absolutely brilliant goal, and everyone turned around and the cop going, "This is it. He's the answer. This will be it."
Yeah.
And there's a lot of pressure on him, I think. But I think McManaman and Fowler would have looked at him getting a lot of the praise and thinking, "Wait there, what about us?" And obviously with Robbie Fowler, one of the most natural goal scorers I've ever seen. Obviously maybe didn't take too kindly to that.
He's a street footballer, isn't he? Or he was, in any case, Robbie Fowler. He was always...
and he always had a smile on his face, and he was always joking. And so was McManaman. And you can see that in one of the interviews before the cup final, where they're laughing and joking, and they're taking the mickey out of everyone around them, even other players,
This game has gone down in history for the white suits.
Yeah.
Now,
oh dear.
Now I have to. The English can be strange.
Men in white suits. There they are. Men in white suits. Indeed. You see? Yeah.
The English can be strange sometimes. I mean, do you remember Steve McLaren when England didn't go to the Euros?
Yeah.
And all the stuff about him was that he was carrying an umbrella. Which is in the rain, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. It's a perfectly normal thing to do. But the fact that he was carrying an umbrella, that for some reason, I have no idea why, he just became the Wally with the brolly. And Liverpool were picked on for these white suits. I have to declare an interest. Got to declare an interest here. I'm turning 60 later this year. And thank you. To celebrate, I'm getting my tailor to do an off-white suit for me. Not Tony Monero, not whether you're a mother or whether you're a brother, you're playing offside. No, not that. But, kind of the style that people used to wander around in here. If you look at photos from the 40s, everyone's going around in a white suit. Now it's all flip-flops and those sleeveless shirts known in the States as wife beaters. So I've never really understood why wearing a white suit was considered such a faux pas, and Ferguson says, I thought it was 1-0 to us. Why? What's wrong with wearing a white suit?
Because Liverpool lost. It's as simple as that, isn't it? If Liverpool had won, no one would be talking about it. They would have said, what a fashion statement that was. They look like...
they'd all be wearing white. All the other teams would be... Sorry, go on.
They just looked like they come out of Miami Vice, didn't they? It was just like, because they got beat, it's become the centre of attention. And as I just held up the book before, Men in White Suits by my mate Simon, and it's become a thing. It's become a sort of like indication of Liverpool's lack of success during the 90s, and that was epitomised by that. But the game was. Everyone was predicting a classic, but it was an absolutely drab affair, wasn't it? Where really neither team got going really, and it was just a sensational goal by Cantona where all the Liverpool defence dived out the way, didn't they, including the goalie.
I'd just come back from Brazil just a few days before. I had to be back for kind of visa reasons and so on. So I was watching the game through the eyes of Brazilian football because that's all I was watching at that time. And I couldn't believe how terrible it was.
Yeah.
It was absolutely terrible. Now, in Brazil at the time, everything was attacking fullbacks. And to balance out the attacking fullbacks, you got a defensive midfielder. That's just the way that the sides were set up. And I looked at Liverpool, 3 centre-backs. Now, if you're going to play 3 centre-backs, you got to have wing-backs who hit the byline. Otherwise, you're just wasting a defender. You're just wasting a player, And Liverpool, all right, McAteer is the right wing-back.
McAteer was,
Yeah, but the left wing-back is Rob Jones, who's a right-footed defensive fullback.
Yeah.
And so you just look at the way the team's set up and you're thinking, for crying out, it just doesn't make any sense. What on earth has happened? This is Roy Evans, boot room veteran, and they got everything right for so many years.
Yeah.
How have they got to this where they are so absolutely terrible? And the holding midfielder is one as well. When in Liverpool's glory years, you didn't need one quite so much because back 4, the centre-backs, as we've talked about before, after that Belgrade game, they were quick and they could play and they pushed up high. They squeezed the space that way. But obviously with 3 centre-backs, there's going to be that space because you're bringing the team further backwards. And I was always amazed that they bought Mark Wright, who was a very fine player, but his instinct as a centre-back was to drop.
Yeah.
And the Liverpool centre-backs in the glory days had all come from a school where you don't drop, you go forward. So, and the success of Cantona in English football is pretty much. And he was a fabulous player, but the reason he was so successful in England was because at that time there was no depth in the midfield, just a straight line of 4. Yeah. So there's all that space between.
So we could play in between the lines. Yeah,
and he just stood there. It's what made Nigel. As soon as people cottoned on to that, Nigel Clough's career effectively ended, didn't it? Because that's what he used to do. I remember talking to because Juninho had just gone to England just a few months earlier, and talking to him about it. And he was saying, everyone had told me it was going to be really tough in England and, really hard to find space. He said it was the easiest thing in the world because there was just this massive gap between the defence and the midfield. I go stand there and I got space. So looking at it from mid-Brazilian eyes of attacking fullbacks and defensive midfielders, the way that the sides are set up, especially Liverpool, is just terrible. I couldn't believe that this side had such a good season.
Yeah. Yeah, our midfield at the time, Jamie Redknapp, wasn't it? He was well known at Anfield for get stuck in, Redknapp, you can't tackle to save your life. It was that type of attitude, so we didn't have that protection. The irony is that Cantona scored this goal and Cantona could have been a Liverpool player, as you know. Do you know the story? Where he was offered by Michel Platini, knocked on Souness's door and said, I've got this young French kid. He's got a few problems, but he wants to play in the Premier League, and presumably he wanted to play for Liverpool because Michel Platini was there. We were playing Auxerre at home at the time, I think, 91. I think it was. We'd just been let back into Europe, and Souness said, "Look, I'm trying to put out fires all over the pitch. I don't want another troublesome player." So then he went to Sheffield Wednesday on for a trial. Yeah. And then Leeds spies must have been in the bushes, seen him play, and he signed for Leeds without a trial.
What did you make? What did you make of John Barnes? Late version John Barnes in that position.
I absolutely loved him. I loved him, but I can understand why. I think he miscontrolled the ball once in 4 years, and the crowd got on his back because they'd seen of John Barnes, who was the swashbuckling John Barnes who'd gone down the wing. Now he's playing a completely different role, but I liked the role he played. But maybe that's because he just collected the ball and gave it as quick as he could to someone like Fowler or McManaman or Collymore. And I thought it was great. And in fact, on that day, I don't think he had a particularly poor game. He had a poor aftermath because some of my mates went to China White because they'd heard that some of the players were going to China White nightclub.
Club, yeah.
And they decided to go there, so disgusted they were with the performance of some of the players, and gave them abuse walking into the club. And, got the classic reply of like, they'd all say, "We pay your wages, what are you doing? That was a disgrace, you should be going, you should go home, you should be seen in public," and all that. And they would just like put their heads down and got in as quick as they can, To be fair to Fowler and McManaman, their parents were at our hotel, but they said, a lot of the team have gone to China White, but Robbie and Stevie have gone home. They were so upset by the result,
What did you make of that 90s decline of Liverpool? I mean, I happened to be there in that semi-final against Palace in 90 when you could see it falling apart. Under pressure, Hansen and Lawrenson collapsed. And what was really striking was Liverpool, who were based on collectivity, pass.
Yeah.
Under pressure, that broke down. And it just became give the ball to Barnes and hope he can do something miraculous.
Yeah.
Why did it go so badly wrong in the subsequent years? Why couldn't they put it right then?
I think it was recruitment. I think it's all that. Liverpool at the height were always buying, 2 or 3 players from a position of strength. I think it was Alan Hansen said to Souness when Souness got the job as manager. I wasn't particularly pleased, but he'd just done an exclusive with the Sun newspaper, and it just didn't seem right to a lot of Liverpool fans. But Alan Hansen said to Souness, he said, "It's not like when you were here, It's it's going down the pan. It's an aging squad, and we're not getting the young players in." I think it all goes down to in the mid '80s, Jeff Twentyman, who ended up at Rangers recruiting for Souness, who bought all these players that were suited to Rangers at the time. Jeff Twentyman left, or was told to leave because of they thought he was yesterday's man. But, he still had the eyes and he still had the scouting network. And I think Ron Yeats took over. And, God rest his soul, Ron Yeats, great player, great servant of the club, but not particularly a great scout, I don't think, But I think that's when it started to unravel, That's when it started to go wrong. So that was in the late 80s. That was going on from 86 onwards, Mm-hmm. I think even fans on the terraces were going, where's the young players coming through? Where's the players that were identifying and coming in? But you got to remember Dalglish's team in '88 had beaten Notts Forest, a young Notts Forest side, 5-0 at Anfield, which Tom Finney had said was the greatest club performance he'd ever seen. And he said, "I've seen the Brazil team play, but that was the greatest club performance I've ever seen." So there was still 88 was the time to rebuild, and I think. You can't underestimate Hillsborough, the effect it had on the club in '89. No. I don't think you can underestimate that. Football did. It in a way it took a back seat for many fans. We couldn't really comprehend what was going on. So when it was going a bit pear-shaped in the '90s, people just said, "Well, it's that's it. That's football. It's happening." People weren't happy about it, obviously, but there was the odd game like the Newcastle 4-3. It was 93, 94, where I think it was, and it's regarded as the Premiership game of the century, wasn't it? And games like that, there was always light at the end of the tunnel. But as Half Man Half Biscuit said that light was an oncoming train.
I'm glad we've got you here to quote some lyrics at us, and we'll talk music later on.
From Tranmere Rovers supporters, I'm led to understand.
Yeah, and a very good one as well. I thought it was a bit of because he turned down the tube in the 80s because Tranmere played on a Friday night.
Yeah.
Oh,
I thought this is a
wow.
publicity stunt, but I've got to know Blackie since, and no, it wasn't a publicity stunt. They're the most indie band ever. They've never done any interviews hardly, no promotion, no nothing. They sell out everywhere. You know, they are actually the definition of a cult band. You know.
Yeah. Obviously, this result in this FA Cup final probably hurt Liverpool fans more because Manchester United, for some reason that I've never quite understood, are the great rivals.
Is it the definitive moment when United overtake Liverpool as the main force?
That's a good question.
I think so, yeah, because United had lost. I mean, we'd beaten Blackburn, and United, I think, drew at West Ham a couple of years before, and they hadn't got the league, And United fans always say they thought they'd never win the league because they were always that close, but never. But then after this, they went from strength to strength, and then it became the United Arsenal rivalry, didn't it? And Liverpool they also ran really until later on, till the Julia period, really,
Yeah, where does that rivalry come from? Because I understand from other sources that it comes from religious differences once upon a time, etc. Which probably. Oh, well, okay, but fair enough. You tell me, because of course a lot of football teams going back 100 years would have been predicated upon Protestantism or Catholicism in Britain. In any case, but. Okay, if that was 100 years ago, why does that rivalry continue? It feels like your rivals are Everton rather than.
You've got to remember, Matt Busby was one of my dad's favourite players. He was Liverpool captain, and Liverpool got him on the coaching staff after the war. But the board of directors still chose the players, and Matt Busby was then offered by United to become the manager. So he left for United. So I think you've got to look back at that period. There was a bit of resentment there that he'd left, and then he built United into this, institution. But really it was the 60s, I think. And Shankly and Matt Busby were great friends, of course. But the rivalry really come to fruition in the 60s when you started getting youth culture, singing on the terraces, skinhead gangs, and it all goes back to those days. And United were the first English club to win the European Cup, and Shankly thought he should have been in 65 when we allegedly cheated out of it by bent referees from Italy. I can't believe there was bent referees in Italy. But when I was growing up, United were big rivals and that, but we didn't hate them as such. It was only really late 60s, early 70s. And when United went down, and they were causing chaos in the second division, weren't they, all the fans? I think that's when it really started to kick in. Liverpool fans' impression was that, we were winning all the trophies in the 70s, but they were still getting all the headlines.
That's exactly what, when I went to college in the mid-80s. It's the first time I'd travelled. It was Coventry. It was the furthest north I'd ever been. And all the Liverpool fans were telling me this. They were saying, look, we win, but all the media coverage is about their glamorous, So they had a kind of, because Liverpool was collective. It wasn't stars based.
That's it. Yeah.
Was it? And United, with that glam, and Busby explicitly set out to create a glamorous side for an unglamorous city. That was his explicit mission at United, and there was this resentment from the Liverpool fans that there was so much focus on the glamour of United, while Liverpool were much better.
Yeah, I think there's certainly a perception. You'd have to get an academic to look at newspaper headlines and column inches, but that was the perception from Liverpool fans. So even when they're in the second division, they're still getting all the, and it was Liverpool. People, we don't resent it now, but Liverpool were called the Red Machine. It was like, it's a machine, it's a collective, as you say, whereas United, it was like long hair and glamour, And like Andy Mitten texted me the other day and said he's the United We Stand fella, big United fan. And he said, have you ever heard Liverpool fans calling United the Glams? And I haven't, not the Glams. Liverpool used to say, they've got all the players, they think that they're film stars and all. And that was the perception, but we never had a nickname like the Glams, or I can't remember it, But, I think, as I say, it's perception. And like you had local news like Granada Reports. So you had people like Tony Wilson on there, who's a big United fan. So in 78, and this was unheard of in those days, he's reading the news with a Bruges scarf on because we're playing Bruges in the European Cup final. And I thought, I was at the match, so I never saw it, but I've seen clips of it. And I thought that was funny, but a lot of people didn't find it funny.
What I did find funny was the nickname the Spice Boys for Liverpool. I mean, you wanted the press headlines, didn't you? And you got them, but not quite as you would have wished.
I think in the book Men in White Suits, I think it was the Daily Mail who called them the Spice Boys. And I think the Spice Girls weren't out really till 96, so it was
it's exactly this time, exactly.
So the Spice Girls were in the news, so it's obviously you're going to Spice Boys. Now they weren't white suits, they were off cream or something, and David James gets the blame, but he always says in interviews, it wasn't me, I just had the number for Armani, I gave that to the lads. And it was John Barnes the one who rang them up, which I wouldn't be surprised, because John Barnes was famous for walking down Church Street in Liverpool, our main shopping area street, wearing the most outrageously, flamboyant clothes, and he didn't care, and there was also a period, where John Barnes went on to £8,000 a week, and there was uproar in the city, because it was the height of Liverpool being unemployed in the city, and he went on to £8,000 a week in the late 80s, and that caused, I'm never going again, man. I'm ripping my season ticket off. £8,000 a week. It's just not 800,000.
Yeah, I actually thought you said 800,000. Do you remember which of the Spice Girls Robbie Fowler went out with?
Oh, I don't know. Did he?
See, it's a good question.
I know Jamie Redknapp went out with Louise from Eternal, didn't he?
Yeah, that's not the same thing. He married her. He didn't just go out with her. He married her.
Oh, he married her, yeah. But Robbie Fowler went out with a Spice Girl? I didn't know that.
Well, I thought that was where Baby Spice came from. Sorry, that's where the Spice Boys came from.
No,
because
he went
out with one of the Spice Girls. So have a guess anyway. Have a guess.
I know they went to a party. On the match was on the Saturday. They went to 90 Minutes, was a football magazine at the time, which I'm pretty sure I might have done the Stan Collymore interview for. But they went to a party, an award ceremony on the Monday night.
Well,
it was free, and one of the journalists who wrote the article said it was free grosh all night, and he can't ever taste grosh again because he's sick, because it was free. And he said some of the Liverpool players were worse for the wear,
Allegedly, I should add, by the way.
Allegedly, of course.
Yeah, before Robbie Fowler takes my missus's house off me, it was alleged that he went out with one of these Spice Girls. It was alleged that he was dating. Which one do you think, Tim, that Robbie Fowler was alleged to
I can't really remember them. This is the moment when you realise that you're old. Because when you're a kid and a record comes out, and even if you hate it, you think, that's probably going to be a hit. You kind of know. You're plugged in. As I say, I came back to England around this time, and I was staying at a mate's house, and he had all these channels, and there was one channel, and they were just on all the time with this song. It was just all blanket. And I remember thinking, this is so desperate. This doesn't have any chance at all. I didn't think anything more about it until a few months later. I was back in Brazil and I was reading the paper, and the fellow said, the columnist said, I'm in London at the moment and my life's hell because I'm in the same hotel as the sensation of all of London, the Spice Girls. And it was a Spice Girls with Tell You What I Want, What I Really, Really Want. It was a record that was seen all the time. I was saying, no, this has no chance. No.
Just goes to show.
Sorry,
We are
sorry,
going to
Mr.
talk about
Beatles.
this.
Sorry, Mr. Beatles, but I'm Decca. I know what's going on. You lot haven't got a hold. Guitar groups are on their way out.
Yeah.
Indeed, and the Sex Pistols will never catch on either. Don't forget that one.
Chance.
Yeah. So it was you, was it, Pete? It was you that said that. It was you that was working for EMI when you said that. EMI. Okay. Before we get on to music, though, let's just rewind for a moment about this match in particular.
It's a fabulous goal, isn't it? The execution.
Yeah.
James comes out with a punch, and the way that Cantona moves his feet to get in position for the volley, and then strikes the ball on that trajectory.
It's the power he got on it. It was unbelievable. I was right behind it. So it scored in the opposite end, but I was right behind it. You know, when you see it coming down, you think, it's a packed defence, never going to get through, but miraculously it gets through. You know.
But
Jammy goal.
Well, you can call it that. After all these years, fair enough.
Did you ever think you were going to win, Pete? Did you ever think that it was going to be Liverpool's day?
No, not really. We weren't that confident, but we were hoping we could get to extra time. And it was lucky. I think it was a late goal, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it was
85.
85. Yeah. So but anything was possible because, as you say, United weren't the dominant force then. So it was like, it was. I think obviously Cantona just transformed them, didn't he?
Yeah.
His mentality and everyone else felt that with this name tag, we didn't have the mental. We didn't have the capacity, the mentality. That's why they brought Insin, I believe, because they thought he had that mentality of a winning mentality. That's why he was brought in. Paul Ince, which wasn't that popular with the fans, but people were saying, "Oh well, shrug the shoulders if that's what it needs to get us over the line." Because we were playing some great football during that period. There's no doubt about it. And we were always finishing, just on the periphery. Third or fourth or whatever, but at the time I don't think Champions League places went down to third or fourth, did they? So we never got into the Champions League until 2001, I don't think.
Yeah, as we talk though, you are top of the league after having a dramatic match just a couple of days ago against Nottingham Forest. It was a really good match, actually.
Great match.
Yeah, and probably a draw was probably the fair result as well. And of course, you've got Arsenal snapping at your heels.
I disagree with you there, Dalton. I think second half we were the better team. We deserved to win in the second half.
Yeah.
I mean, it's only one team trying to win that game in the second half.
Sure. 100%. No, you're right. But having said that, they did, contain you in the first half.
First half, we were awful, I thought.
So a draw then, first half to them, second half to you. I feel, I know it's painful. Yeah. But, and you've got Arsenal snapping at your heels, although a little way back, and then Nottingham Forest bringing up the rear of the three. But your aim this season, I'd have thought, above all else, is going to be to win the Premier League. Yeah. Not necessarily to get into the Champions League as much. I mean, it would be great to get there and to win it. What's changed this season? Obviously, new coach. He was handed, I think, the dream job because Jurgen Klopp.
Do you want to be the guy after the guy? Usually it's
if
better
the
to be
guy,
the guy after the guy, isn't it?
But if the guy leaves the club in such a well-run state, I wouldn't mind being the guy after the guy because all he has to do is let the club carry on being at the level where
that's been his triumph, isn't it? The lack of ego. I'm not going to bring 50 of my own players in. I'm going to work with what's there. I think that's that.
Yeah. I think there was all during the summer. Nobody knew much about Slot. Obviously, he was loved, Feyenoord. So everyone, was thinking, well, that's their league. No one's ever really come to the Premier League from there and been a success. So we didn't know what to expect. Everyone's expectations were Champions League if we qualify for the Champions League. So he's hit the ground running. I think what it is, there's been a few tweaks, obviously, in the system. And we're not as swashbuckling, we're not as we can still counter attack, with great speed, but we are a bit more contained. And I think if you got Gravenberch is the revelation, Klopp didn't really play him that much. He did have an injury in the League Cup final, so that put him back, but he was always played on the periphery of the midfield, on the left of the midfield. He was never played in that role. And we were after Zubamendi in the summer, and we thought we had him. And I think he was even photographed with the shirt, I believe. But he changed his mind and stayed at Sociedad. But I think Gravenberch has been the revelation. Szoboszlai as well has been absolutely fantastic. And McAllister is just unbelievable. And that midfield trio with Curtis as well on rotation. As long as we can keep them fit, and a few other positions like Van Dijk, obviously, I think we've got a great chance. I mean, it's disappointing that we've been drawing so many games, but hopefully this is our bad patch. And a draw, it was not Forest. I went to the game and it was like, mission: do not get beat. Whatever you do, don't get beat. Don't give them the impetus, and don't give them other teams around us. The chance, really, But this is not like a league against Man City where you have to win every game. I think you'll win the Premier League on 80, but not 100 points like we've been having to do against Man City. So I think, yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic, but we're not. Nobody's thinking it's done and dusted. Nobody's thinking, Brentford on Saturday, and we've got to get a win there, really.
I know it's evolution, but have you come to terms with losing Darwin?
Sorry?
I was trying to be clever, poetic. I was talking about...
He's overreached himself.
Yeah, of course. Darwin Núñez looks like he's a goner.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's given him a chance, and he's been a crowd favourite because of his efforts. But, he doesn't, it doesn't seem to register, what he hasn't got that football brain that Liverpool require, And when you've got players like Gakpo's a fantastic player, he doesn't get enough credit, I don't think. He did great in the Euros, didn't he? He was fantastic for Holland, and he's carried it on with Liverpool. But I think Núñez, people would be, we give him a chance with two managers, so yeah.
It's a shame.
Not down to losing Salah. I
Yeah.
think Salah should stay, and I think, you look at the figures Liverpool have got from being top of the Champions League group and winning every game. They've got, tens of millions more than they were expecting. So I don't see I know it's a game of poker. The Salah has been unbelievable. He never does interviews or goes into the press zone, and now you can't stop him. He's putting photographs on Instagram of the three players who the contract. It's just unbelievable stuff. But I think it's down to the club, isn't it? It's down to the club and what they think is a fair offer. I think you've got to trust them in terms of they got Arne Slot, so they've done the homework on him. They've done the homework on Klopp, so you just got to trust them.
Yeah, the charts, as we always look at, to reflect the musical landscape of the match that we focus on. The charts from the 11th of May 1996. Do you remember much about this chart at the time, Pete?
Not really. I mean, I remember. One of my favourite lines from any pop song is "Libraries gave us power." From the Manic Street Preachers, and that's in the chart, isn't it? A lot of the other stuff, I don't know. I was becoming fairly disillusioned with music at the time. The group had almost split up. We hadn't split up as such, but we just drifted apart. I remember Suggs doing Cecilia.
Yep. Yeah, in a reggae style. In a reggae style.
I was a bit surprised by that. It was,
It didn't work, did it? I mean, it's in the charts. It's a pop thing, and it was hard to stop Suggs getting into the charts either as a member of Madness or on his own in those days, because he's got a little bit of the old school sort of what do they call it? Not dancehall. What do they call it in those days? The good old days kind of thing.
Yeah.
Music hall tradition. Yeah, he's got a little bit of that about him.
Oh, gotcha.
And,
definitely.
Yeah, he's been mining that ever since, hasn't he?
Of course,
the music hall thing.
Of course. So Cecilia becomes not so much a love song, but more like a fun song, and reggae is like a choice for people who want to do novelty songs. They often, for whatever reason, do it in reggae. And I was talking to my missus about this, and she was saying, reggae, you can't really do deep, heavy subjects with reggae. They don't quite work, because you can't do for example, you can't do what was I thinking of? Strange Fruit, for example, in reggae.
Right. You can do Police and Thieves, though, can't you? Junior Merv.
Yeah.
UB40 did do Strange Fruit.
Yeah.
In reggae?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. They did
my goodness.
This is right at the start. No, I think reggae with that heavy bass, and obviously your wife's coming from the lighter lovers rock thing, but with that heavy bass, and reggae's spiritual stuff, man. Really spiritual.
Protest music, isn't it?
Okay. I do see where you're coming from, but I see where she's coming from as well. I just hear so much, more serious songs being lightened up in a reggae style. Anyway, Suggs is there in the charts, in the top 10 here. I was surprised about how well I remember this chart, because given that it's I was shocked, given that it's nearly 30 years.
And I remember it because I'd just come back, so this was the music that was around just as I'd come back. And one of my mates' wives was a George Michael fanatic.
Okay.
And so she was playing this album, the album, all the time. And I'd never been into him. She didn't like this. This was George being too serious. I thought it was fucking brilliant. I think this album is him after it's a difficult journey to find out who he is and to find out who he is in public. And I think this is the moment when he's got it. I think this is an astonishing album. And Fast Love. Well, firstly, you can't go wrong with Patrice Rushen. You just can't go wrong with that, can you? The Forget-Me-Nots. But also just the idea. You can have fast food. Why not fast love? And especially for someone who is coming to terms with his own sexuality at a time when his straight mates are settling down and having families, and he emphatically is not settling down and having a family. I think the concept of fast love, it's just brilliant. I do believe we are practicing the same religion. It's one of the great lines about sex I think that there's ever been. I love this song. I think it's an amazing song.
The reason why I remember this chart is because of Return of the Mac, which is the juxtaposition of everything you've just said. But in terms of a anti-love song, whatever, it's completely the juxtaposition of Fast Love, which I agree with you is a brilliant track. And the reason why I remember that so much is because Mark Morrison seemed to come out of nowhere, out of Leicester, and he was on the club scene. He had been bubbling up and people knew about him on the club scene, but I didn't know who he was from Adam, and suddenly it was a bit sort of like, who is this little kid, because not very tall, acting like some kind of like S&M whatever teacher, or
with a strange little voice and everything. A strange voice that he's got.
Well, I didn't like the voice because this was the time when American sort of R&B was dominating, kind of pop R&B was dominating, and I think he's doing what a lot of those guys were doing, doing a little bit of Jodeci, a little bit of Teddy Riley swing beat with guy. It's a little bit like all of that. And I don't think it's an authentic voice from a kid from Leicester. He could have done much more of that. But I remember it because I was like, he's number 2. I think it might even get to number 1. No, it does peak at number 1.
It was everywhere. Everywhere.
It was,
and that's still in my brain today. Every time I get a flight back, every time I'm arriving at Heathrow, it's Return of the Vic. It's always going through my mind.
I like it. And another one that was everywhere, straight in at number 8, is Busta Rhymes with Woo-Ha, Got You All in Check. That was just everywhere that you turned to. Yeah. It was the equivalent for me of Blur's tune, song 2 or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
That one.
Exactly. And this is Busta Rhymes' version almost.
You sure they didn't sample your voice there?
Perhaps.
Well, yeah. They'd rather...
I've got a theory that I'd love to put past Pete on this, which is, I mean, for me, part of the greatness of British music has always been the connection with especially Black American, and also a little bit of Jamaican as well. I mean, I was just thinking about this morning. One of my favourite Beatles records, it's not a record, they only did it live. It's a cover of the Arthur Alexander song, Soldier of Love. I think it's just magical. The way they arrange that stuff for guitars, it's great. And you're thinking, well, why didn't they record it? And it's an easy answer, because Lennon ripped it off for almost everything he wrote around that time. You know, things like Not a Second Time, which is a great song. Yeah. He's just ripped off the chord structure from Arthur Alexander. And for years and years and years, that's what we did. Mm. And then, see, my little theory that I'm going to run by you is the indie moment, and you mentioned indie there with Half Man, Half Biscuit. The indie thing is the moment when that umbilical cord gets broken, because the indie bands, with some huge exceptions, but all the whole majority of that indie thing, it wasn't listening to. There was no R&B influence in it at all.
No,
and you can kind of hear that with the stuff that's coming through now. Even like the Magic Street, the Manic Street Preachers or the Blue Tones, they're coming out of an indie scene, where I think the magical connection with R&B has been lost.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. Yeah, I think
don't.
The last group who for us who were doing that would be Big Audio Dynamite, and I talk about them a lot. I don't think they're given because of Don Letts and all the hip hop beats they were using, but by 96, that had been rejected almost by, the record industry or whatever. I mean, there was flirtation with it when the Happy Mondays were doing stuff, and we were using hip hop beats from New York on lots of our stuff, And there was a lad called Sam Severs who was in a hip hop band called Downtown Science, and we were doing a sound check in America, and they were on. It was Big Audio Dynamite, The Farm, and Downtown Science. And he said, I recognise some of them beats, And I went, yeah. He said, we took them off your records. How much do we owe you? And he went, hey, man, I'm flattered.
Yeah. The thing with Big Audio Dynamite, because I agree with you, I think, but I wonder sometimes, why didn't that cut through more? And part of my explanation is they looked so terrible. And the look was just awful, wasn't it? They just looked ridiculous.
Yeah, they did.
No comment.
No, but they didn't look. I mean, coming from the Clash, there was a uniform, there was a way of looking, and then they tried to bring in, if you like, diversity, and I don't mean that in a pejorative way at all, but they brought in people from different disciplines because Don Letts was there.
Stupid baseball cats. You're going to look like.
I don't even remember that era.
How can we have a culture that criticises someone for using an umbrella, but accepts people wandering around in baseball caps?
I was going to say that because actually Pete answered that umbrella one with the same thing about the white suit. They lost. That's what the culture is about. If England hadn't lost, he wouldn't be the Wally with the brolly.
Well, let me tell you, my white suit is going to be fantastic, whether I win or lose, and obviously I'm going to lose.
Well, you're going to, you will suit it. You look like a detective.
Suits you, sir. Yeah.
TV
Listen.
detective. I'm surprised you haven't branched out into that.
It'll come.
I can't
the
become
idea
Randall and Hopkirk deceased until I die. So it's a long-term
Right.
career move, I think.
Look,
What a classic that was. Only you, Jeff.
as long as I'm Randall, you can be Hopkirk any day. As long as I'm Randall, taking care of your missus whilst you're away, of course. That was so
I can walk through
naughty.
Jennifer Lopez wall anytime I want.
Well, exactly. So poor old Randall does never get a chance of romance because of you walking through the walls anytime you want. Anyway, that aside, listen, it's been an absolute classic conversation. I particularly loved your memory of the morning and the day of the match, Pete. I can't tell you, that was
And
so...
it's now, Simon is he's still doing them when they play this year.
Him, Oasis.
He's still the promoter.
Oh my
He must
goodness.
be doing something right, must he?
Oh my goodness! I mean, he needs to buy us all a drink, mate. If he's
Yeah. Well, the thing about that morning is, like, some of the lads who were with us were like, like, they were like, "Oh, who's that?" Like, they're very suspicious of him. So, is he a busy or what? A busy as a policeman.
No, I think you should be suspicious of anyone who's promoting the evils of stadium rock. I think your mates were quite right. Doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, I'm very glad they cast it on John Power, one of the great people in music for me. John Power from the Lars and cast, and they're the support band, so I might go to watch them.
Yeah, well, it's in a funny way, Taylor Swift has made it possible, and I can see a lot of bands like Oasis looking at that and thinking, in the same way that Elvis Presley thought about it when he went to see Tom Jones in Las Vegas. Hang on a second. That should be me, for one thing, but also Tom Jones has made it cool. Tom Jones has made it cool. Remember, Tom Jones was the brand new thing, and the same way Taylor Swift has made these stadium rock things cool. The demographic that went and saw her, they didn't think would be going to stadium gigs.
What's the matter with just keeping everyone in Brixton Academy or the old town and country club?
I mean, that's it for me.
Yeah,
it's
that's the great. That's the great thing.
That's a
I don't
different
particularly
thing.
like even the Echo Liverpool M&S Arena used to be called the Echo Arena, 8,000 to 10,000. I saw Squeeze there, and I love Squeeze.
Me too.
And it was a brilliant concert, but they're not a stadium. I want to see them in a 2,000 capacity.
For some groups, it doesn't work, and I think be careful that you're comparing a gig in a smaller venue with a stadium venue, because when you say Brixton Academy, for a lot of people, that's a big venue.
Yeah, that's about the limit for me, I think.
Yeah.
My missus is playing at Ronnie Scott's at the end of this month.
Oh.
And I bet you it's going to be the best gig that she's played for ages. It's not her gig. It's not her gig. She's going, there's a Swiss guy from, he's a trombonist, brilliant trombonist, who has been schooled on the sort of early Scatterlights kind of stuff. So he's like Don Drummond, the great Don Drummond. He's a Swiss guy. Brilliant. And he's brought her on to do about 3 or 4 tracks that she did on his album. She's toured with him a little bit. But I'm saying to you, it'll be, even though it's not her gig, it'll be one of the best gigs. Because at Ronnie's, you're so close up to everything. It's so intimate. It's like you're in somebody's living room. Whereas you go to Brixton Academy and, it's sometimes like you've got to be in the mood for that. I know reggae gigs, man. Everybody I know smokes a proper spliff to, because the Academy is still a little bit of a kind of a heavy duty thing for them. They'd rather be in a smaller venue for reggae.
I don't know if your wife Carol, I don't know if she can make the Swiss rock, but I know that she can make the Swiss roll. Borrowed off Joey Jones, 1977.
I'll tell her that joke had nothing to do with me. You'll get all the blame for it. Don't worry.
Taxi.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, it's that time. Thank you, Pete. It's been an absolute pleasure. We've been talking about the FA Cup final, 1996, 11th of May, Liverpool versus Man United. I suppose the long and the short of it is that Liverpool lost, and they wore those cream-coloured white Armani suit.
Off-white, I think.
Off-white, is it off-white? Not quite cream.
It looks good on some of them, but on others the cut looks a bit ropey. If my tailor does a cut as ropey as that, he's not getting paid.
It was significant. Roy Evans and Ronnie Moran never wore them. They wore dark suits.
Oh, wow.
What the fuck are they dressed in there? Only Kevin Keegan's ever been married in a white suit.
Yeah, of course. Look, this chart, when I look at it, we still haven't given it its justice. I'm looking Firestarter by Prodigy is at number 21. My word. That's only theme from Essex Press, The Return Trip. You know, you might like them, you might not. Michael Jackson, They Don't Care About Us, which is a departure from Michael Jackson as well. But California Love by Tupac and Dr. Dre at number 31. Oh my word. You know,
also Children by Robert Miles, I thought was brilliant.
Indeed. Don't look back in anger.
Sums up the era a little bit, doesn't it? That Robert Miles record, that genre of the time.
I think this is really an amazing chart, actually.
Everything but the girl, Walking Wounded, just starting to go on. The next album that they did, the Temperamental album, I think is another high point. It's fantastic.
Ghetto Boys, The World is a Ghetto. They had to do that, obviously. But they were one of the best, rap crews. In terms of lyrics, I mean, the guy was kind of philosophical. The lead singer and writer for the Ghetto Boys, I think it's a brilliant chart. It's a shame that we didn't really delve deeply into it, but we had a lot more to talk about in any case. But we'll welcome you back another time if you've got time, Pete, anytime you like.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Not a pleasure talking about the match, obviously, but about the surrounding the match, because it was like one of my worst memories of supporting Liverpool. Thanks for it.
You can't have the highs without the lows, can you? You can't do it.
I hope it's been cathartic anyway.
It's been a rich, being a football supporter is a rich tapestry, isn't it? You take the ups with the downs.
That's exactly what Carole King sang about.
You got to take the crunchy with the smooth.
Who sang that, Tim? The crunchy with the smooth.
It's actually it's a Billy Bragg line influenced by Willie Rushton. It's crunchy.
Well,
no, it's chewy.
No, there was that tune. Peanut butter. I like peanut butter. Crunchy peanut butter. Smoothie peanut butter too. I think it was the Olympics. But I could be wrong.
On that bombshell.
Yes. Yes. And you noticed that Pete didn't say, "Oh, somebody might sample your singing, Dawson." On that bombshell, thank you both very much.